Hello and welcome to today's video where we're going to shine a light on ELR Mage's main damage skill, Frostbeam. First up, I'm going to take a quick run of trial 144, see how Frostbeam behaves there. Once we've seen that in action, we'll reconvene here and we shall take a look at the actual Frostbeam and how various things feed into it to make it one of the most powerful things that you're going to see for Mage, if not the most powerful. Okay, so we've got an extremely glassy build, very high risk. Let's see how Frostbeam handles trial 144.
Burn! Take down the healer. Still recharging. Not quite yet.
See, a single hit does a lot of damage to me. Thinking this is strange, it's not actually doing any damage whatsoever. These mobs are all on full health still.
Not quite yet.
Look at the damage sheet. So you see Frostbeam's doing 67% of our damage. We're 2 minutes into the run now and we haven't managed to kill anything, so clearly there's something wrong, or I'm missing something in the build. I mean, I've got a character here with 6 million sheet damage, so it should be ripping through these with Frostbeam surely. But it's not, so let's jump into the training grounds, have a look at how I've got this character currently set up and what we can do to make it a lot more powerful still. So let's have a look at the setup I went for in that failure of a run. So here's the skills page that I used. Frostbolt, absolutely standard. It's needed for the Northern Wind procs and shatter. Arc lightning, again this is standard. We take this because it gives us a 5% damage buff and a 5% attack speed buff, and these stack up to 5 times. So very useful to take. Immolate, essential for proccing shatter and setting mobs on fire, so setting up thermal shock. We've got Frost Nova. Again, this is an essential skill for proccing thermal shock and for setting up Northern Wind for our shatter process. Then we have our Frostbeam here, which is our main damage skill. It's dealing 650% weapon damage per second, deals double damage to frozen targets, so it's got a good synergy with Frost Nova, which freezes targets, and Northern Wind counts your targets as frozen too. Our passives, Power Infusion, this procs twice a minute, it gives us 40% extra damage for 6 seconds. Celerity, I take this. More haste is good. I like lots of attack speed. And glass cannon, so our damage is increased by 20%, but that's at a cost of our armour, which is reduced by 20%. So it's a highly offensive build. It's a kill or be killed type, and yet we've just seen in trial 144 I couldn't kill anything in 2 minutes. And the reason for this is over on our equipment page. So here you can see I have 2 items that I hadn't had equipped for that run, and these 2 items don't so much turbocharge Frostbeam, but more like adding a couple of warp engines to it and sending it so far out of sight you wonder, well, why didn't I use these before? So one of these items, our Bracer of Mastery, and on this case got lucky and rolled a level 77. RNG God smolder me on that day. Frostbeam damage is increased by 445%. So with that alone, in a test run, with just this bracer, I was able to kill the mobs quite easily on trial 144. I wouldn't honestly worry too much about the Frostbeam damage increase value that you get here. I've also got a level 73 bracer which has got 495% increased damage, and in high level trials in the real world the difference, I can't see any. It's negligible if any in performance, so I stick with the 77 because it's celestialized, so it's got slightly better stats up here. So let's equip that. Now for the main event, the Frostfire Sash. It's a god tier item really. It only costs 10 glory to unlock. It should be your #1 priority in gaining if you're looking to play a Frostbeam Mage. So what does it do? Well, our Frostbeam becomes a ray of frostfire, causes the target to burn for 1000% weapon damage over 6 seconds every time it's dealing damage. So that's in addition to its regular 650% weapon damage per second. So why is this important? Well, 2 words really: thermal shock. When you're channeling your Frostbeam, the sash is going to add more and more stacks of burning to your target. And remember, this is an area of effect skill. I mean, admittedly it's a narrow area, but it passes right through anything in its path for quite a distance. So you're setting loads and loads of mobs on fire, which is why we're taking our healers with their vortex skill to try and pull as many mobs as possible into the path of this Frostbeam, so we can set them on fire, and then as soon as they're on fire and we've finished our channel, we're hitting Frost Nova and we're triggering a large thermal shock attack on them as well. So let's equip this. Let's have a look at this in action then in the training grounds and see what it's doing. We've got a map here with multiple enemies. We've got 5 skeletons to play with today. So what I'm going to do is engage the skeletons. I'll start my Frostbeam channel. I'll vortex the skeletons in there to pull them all in. Mobile players currently have to vortex and then Frostbeam, because the vortex on mobile cancels the Frostbeam channel for reasons or bugs. So let's have a look at this. So here's our 5 skeletons. And that's a Frostbeam, vortex. See, we've got 47 stacks of Frostburn in play here. So this is the burning effect that's been applied by our Frostfire Sash. On the details tab at the moment, our Frostbeam's done 56.85 billion damage. Frostburn dot got 3,287 casts just off that one beam over 5 mobs. And the way that we're now going to deal another large amount of damage, the creatures are on fire, so if I now cast Frost Nova, that's going to trigger thermal shock, and we're going to cause another large amount of damage to occur. So we have to do that again. The Frostfire's run out. Got 56 this time, and there we go. Our thermal shock did 59.59 billion damage, so that's almost as much in one thermal shock cast that Frostbeam has done in 2 channels now. I'm going to reset this and then we'll have a look at how we maximise our damage.
You fall like flies.
So we're going to engage the mobs using Arc Lightning as our auto attack. We're then going to cast Frost Nova, Immolate, Frostbeam, and then finish up with Frost Nova. And a lot of things are going to happen throughout all of that. Now, Arc Lightning is going to give us an attack speed buff and a damage buff against the enemies. Frost Nova is going to be cast on the skeletons. That's going to trigger Northern Wind. We're then going to cast Immolate on the enemies. That will cause Shatter to proc, causing more damage, and it will set the skeletons on fire. We then cast Frostbeam. That's going to proc thermal shock because the skeletons are on fire from Immolate. It will deal its normal damage, plus it will put a mass of stacks of burning on those skeletons. And then when we finish with Frost Nova again, that's another big thermal shock proc because the Frostfire burning that we've applied to the enemies. So here we go.
Aye, aye.
There's our Arc Lightning. Frost Nova, Immolate, Frostbeam, and thermal shock. Here we see it, thermal shock did the large part of our damage, 240 billion. I think that's partly due to a critical hit coming into play there. Our Frostbeam did an impressive 142 billion off a single cast. Our Frostburn damage over time, so the burning effect from our Frostfire Sash. It's a bit lower this time, but that's because I cast Frost Nova much earlier than in our original demonstration. Now we'll take a look at my trinkets to explain how they help push more damage into this build. First up we have the Vial of the Wind Spirit. I take this because it increases our attack speed, our haste. More haste is more stacks of the Frostburn dot. More stacks of Frostburn dot means bigger thermal shocks when we hit Frost Nova after our Frostbeam channel. The Talisman of Storms, this procs twice a minute when you're attacking. It will increase crit damage by 3000%, and given that I'm running over 2000% already, that takes it up over 5000%, which is why I run a 50% crit rating, which is quite a high stat for that. On the weapon, I take Slayer, chance to increase damage to elite and boss creatures by 100% for 5 seconds. This can happen 3 times a minute. So that, when it's active, allows for massive damage against bosses and elites. And on the helmet, and I only recommend taking this enchantment for your push gear. If you're looking at experience farming, I would prefer to go with something like a frost damage or a fire damage, depending on your setup enchantment. But this, the longer you're attacking an enemy, the more damage your attacks are going to do to it. So I'm just going to put in a clip here, which is towards the end of a fight on Garm on trial 154. In this, he's around 40% health left. He's got quite a few stacks of osmosis on him, and Slayer enchant procs at the same time as Talisman of Storms, and I get a critical hit. So let's see what happens in that case. Now that we've got our build properly set up, let's take another look at Trial 144 and see how it goes this time.
Nothing like the forest. For the living!
I'm not sure I want to fight Garm in here.
Still recharging. Kill the summon. A strong one. Not ready. Not quite yet. Not ready. Freeze.
Already that thermal shock proc filled up 10% of the bar. Here we are, nearly 30% and only a minute in.
Still recharging. Not quite yet. Freeze. Burn.
I think that will do. So we're barely 1.5 minutes in and we're nearly 85% through clearing the mobs for this. Thermal shock's doing 50% of the damage, Frostbeam another 45%. That demonstrates the power of the Frostfire Sash combined with the Braces of Mastery and then other enchantments thrown in just to help boost things even further. And thanks for watching.